Hey everyone, welcome to the Breaking Muscle podcast. The show is called Outliers, and I'm with Dr. Wendy Walsh. Very excited to have her on the show today, Wendy.
Thank you.
Thanks
I'm happy
for
to
being
be here.
I appreciate
In
it.
a small little booth studio. It's supposed to be an audio booth. Why are we doing video?
I know. We're doing video.
It's cozy in here.
Very cozy. And I'm excited to have Wendy on the show. Wendy, an incredible, successful past in the world of psychology and health, and has appeared on numerous talk shows discussing her profession and her specialty. And she's, was a co-host of the Doctors Emmy-nominated show, CNN on Human Expert Behavior. She's worked on
Human
CNN.
Behavior Expert. You'll
Excuse
get
me. Sorry. I'm sorry. And right now she's currently professor of health of psychology at Cal State Channel Islands, which we're broadcasting from. So
Yes. Yay.
I'm reading all this because I want to get it
Go
in.
Dolphins, go Dolphins.
Is that what the...
Yeah, Cal State Channel Islands.
I didn't know they were the Dolphins.
Go Dolphins.
Awesome. But I wanted to... The reason Wendy and I have been talking for a little bit, basically today is kind of an overview of health. And I think your specialty is obviously in the mental side of things. But for you, what's a healthy person look like?
Well, a healthy person you often can't, well, I was going to say you can't always tell by looking at them, but generally you can too because it shows up physically. A healthy person looks at all the components of their life. First of all, they treat their body a little bit like a temple as far as diet, exercise, sleep. But then psychologically, they have good stress coping habits. Mm-hmm. They are able to do some often mindfulness and ways to be able to calm themselves so that stress and cortisol levels doesn't get the best of them. And they tend to have secure, healthy relationships, both social relationships within a community, and they tend to be active and involved with their community, mm-hmm. And interpersonal one-on-one relationships. Because the research is really clear that having a healthy, secure attachment is actually good for your health. People who have long-term bonds tend to live longer. They have better physical health, better mental health. They accumulate more wealth because maintaining two households is a lot more expensive.
Sure.
And what we do know is that isolation is probably the worst thing you can ever do for your health. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because now we're seeing more unmarried adults in America. Not that you have to be married to have a secure bond, but we're seeing more homes where the person living in it is just an individual.
Sure.
And they're looking through screens trying to make these attachments. And at the same time, we're seeing obesity go up, heart disease go up, cancer go up, diabetes go up, etc. And I think that there's a big connection with the isolation and our bad health.
I agree. I want to say the statistic I read was about 65% of adults today are considered obese, right? Overweight.
65? That's pretty high. In America. I've heard only 35, but still.
Yeah.
It's,
the numbers
because obese is at least 30 pounds over your weight. So it's your healthy
mm-hmm.
weight.
Yeah.
So it's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
And I hate to blame the individual because obesity is a really complex thing. We like to easily moralize it and think that it's just a character flaw and people need to exercise more and eat less. But their biology is being hijacked by a major food industry that feeds them salt, sugar, trans fats, carbohydrate, the most inefficient calories, lowest nutrition calories. And then we get them early and get them addicted as children and toddlers. I mean, I've heard that 20% of kids are obese, which, is just a recipe for diabetes future. And so we have to blame the food industry. We have to blame the technology industry because more kids are spending more time on screens than they are running around playing kick the can at night and hide and seek. And we have to blame modern American capitalism that keeps people working too long and not in physical labor anymore, but in seated and keeping them sitting in cars and driving.
Commuting an hour both ways, trying to raise family.
I mean, at my root, I am an evolutionary psychologist. And, in our hunter-gatherer past, we never sat in cockpits called cars and stayed on freeways all day. We didn't ever sit crouched looking at a screen all day. We were moving almost every waking minute. We were walking, we were climbing, we were searching for food, we were killing food, and then we would nap after some delicious protein and fat. And now this does not, like our biology hasn't evolved as fast as our lifestyle and our environment has created health problems for us.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And now you've been a professor here at Channel Islands, Augusta Channel Islands. What made you want to get into what you're doing now?
I've always been really, really health conscious. Back in the, I'm going to date myself here, back in the 1980s, I ran triathlons on the weekends, and then I'd teach 12 aerobic classes during the week, and wonder why I had such bad shin splints.
Sure.
That was back in the day when we did classes. It was carpet on top of cement floor. And I started, my first degree was in journalism, and I started writing for magazines, and I wrote specifically sports medicine because it was this new emerging area, right? People were getting these wear and tear injuries during the running boom and the fitness boom in the 80s that normally only elderly people got. And why were people getting foot and ankle issues and shin issues, etc.? And so I wrote a lot of sports medicine, and that led me into following the changes in nutrition research. And, you know, we had a lot of bad information for a long time because most of the nutritional research in the early days was done on elite athletes. You know, elite athletes do need glycogen stores. They do need to replace them after a big workout, and they're like the only animals on the planet that need a lot of carbs after the workout. The rest of us, if we're ever going to eat carbs at all, should be right before we exercise so we can use it then and get rid of it before it gets into our arteries as plaque. So I would say that the biggest change in nutritional research happened in the last 5 years.
I agree.
And this is with the understanding of the body working on ketones rather than glycogen and glucose, and teaching your body. You can literally hack your metabolism and teach it to run on fat, and which is what our hunter-gatherers did.
Right.
Think about it, Daniel. In our hunter-gatherer past, we were not top of the food chain, by the way. There's a reason why we run the planet now and lions don't. And it has to do with this burgeoning intelligence that we had. And so what we mostly did is clung in the trees, scared to death, doing Pilates, basically, in the trees, right? Holding on, using core, and slow twitch muscle, moving carefully through those trees, afraid that a predator would get us. And then we would let the lions do the kill. Next to the dinner table might be the hyenas. We were way down on the list. And by the time we were brave enough to climb down from that tree and go to the carcass, you know what was left? Organ meats, skin, and fat, and bone marrow, right? All the good, the best part, the cheapest cuts of meat are actually the healthiest. We didn't get the New York steaks. We didn't get the boneless chicken breasts, right? We got the organ meats, we got the bone marrow, and we got the fat.
There's a lot of nutritional value, though.
And that's what our bodies evolved to need. That's what we are made for. We are not made to eat grass. And grains are grass. Cows are made to eat grass. Our intestines can't handle wheat. And so the food companies, though, figured out pretty early on that if they were going to mass manufacture food for people, it was really expensive to do it the healthy way. Exactly. So they genetically modified a bunch of grains, and they tried to make a lot of fake foods out of corn and soy and wheat. And all those turn into sugar in our body. And sugar we used to call an empty calorie. We don't call it an empty calorie anymore. We call it a toxin.
100%.
Because sugar is the thing that causes heart disease and diabetes, and it is also cancer's favorite food.
Yes, it is. You and I talk the same language, especially about sugar.
You know, there's a cancer test where they inject sugar into the cells and see where the cancer cells come to go eat it.
Really?
Yeah, they actually use sugar to detect where cancer is.
No way. Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yep.
I want to ask you, so in the psychology world too, and I firmly believe this, is like you literally are what you eat. And do you find, and just in your research and study, where if you took let's say you took a sample of people who ate really healthy, maybe called keto diet, paleo diet, whatever it was, and exercise, and someone who's eating more of the westernized processed diet, and how their brains work and how they sleep and how they
guess
function,
what you're going to find?
And how they're
You're going to find a much lower serotonin level because serotonin is manufactured in the gut. And when you have there's a whole other area of nutrition that's now coming out of specifically some of the researchers at Harvard called nutritional psychiatry. So if you don't have enough serotonin, you are depressed, you're sluggish, you're slow, and when you go to your doctor, You know what your doctor does? Prescribes an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, an antidepressant. When actually you can change your mood by changing your gut biology. And you can not only feed your gut healthy probiotics, but the most important thing isn't just taking those probiotics, but it's feeding them the foods that those good bugs need. So some of the best vegetables to feed for a healthy gut are artichoke, asparagus, mushrooms, onions, Brussels sprouts. These are the superfoods that your healthy gut bacteria need to eat.
Interesting. So, and that's kind of the sample of, like, if I behind this door, which we're not looking at, but there's behind a door, if I found a really healthy person or someone who's somewhat unhealthy, they might look the same. You know, physically, they might look the same, but what's going on inside their body is completely different. And
Plenty of people are skinny fat.
Right. Yeah, skinny fat, whatever you want to call it. And they might look the same, but their brains are functioning differently too, because what you're consuming and what's actually helping you run, it's all fuel. And it could be the wrong fuel or the right fuel.
Let's talk about strokes, for instance. So it's plaque, right? Some plaque can break off from your carotid artery and get into your brain. Our brains have inflammation as well. I mean, most Americans, adult Americans, are walking around with chronic inflammation. It is so normal to them, they don't even know the difference. And they even have inflammation in their brains. So they're not thinking as quick, their processing speed goes down. It obviously contributes to mood disorders. I really believe that so much of how we feel and how we think can be shaped by nutrition.
100%. I agree with you. I want to switch gears and get into what you're really specialized in, and what you've written books about, and what I consider you an expert on. Is really relationships.
Attachment.
Attachment
theory.
And which, my wife and I talk about this all the time, and mentioning Dr. Sue Johnson, who's she is the kind of the creator of attachment theory.
No. She disseminates modern information about it. The creator is John Bowlby, and he was a British pediatrician psychoanalyst. And in the 1930s, there were a couple things that helped shape his theory. In the 1930s, germ theory became evident. And at that time, when children got sick, small children, even babies and toddlers, and were hospitalized for very long periods of time, all of a sudden there was this concern about germs. So they stopped allowing families to visit. And they said, just keep the germs out of the hospitals.
Is that right?
And then when these children would go home to their parents, the parents would come back to Dr. Bowlby and go, wait a minute, you sent me a very different child, an angry, unruly, bad kid. This was not the same kid I sent. And so this began his journey into the roots of attachment. And this idea that the kinds of attachment we have with our early life primary attachment figures actually start to shape our personality and who we are, and become a blueprint for adult romantic love. He went on to be hired later during World War II by the World Health Organization to study populations of kids who were separated during World War II. And they included Jewish kids in Europe with the Kindertransport who were trying to get kids out. The English kids in London who they sent off on trains to the big mansions out where the uncle lived in the country, right? Away from their families, away from their parents. And he started to actually track and create major data around parental separation in kids and personality disorders, anxiety, depression, and more importantly, their inability to attach in a secure way to adults later. So, there's been more research on attachment. In the 1950s, Mary Ainsworth came. Later, Mary Main developed the strange situation test. You can actually take a 12-month-old baby and its mom, put them in a room playing, and then you can ask the mother to leave the room. Coders, psychologists behind glass will code the reaction of the child. The mother will come back after a few minutes. They will code the reaction of the child. And they can actually, there's a correlation between that young baby's level of attachment security and their cortisol levels that lead to heart disease. And they're now making these amazing correlations between insecure attachment and later adult health.
And that's just a mom walking away for how long?
for a few minutes, but
Right.
but this is indicative of what she does on a regular basis, right? The baby's reacting how. And so actually, for those listening
Stress
who happen
levels.
to be parents, let me say that you never judge your child or toddler's reaction on when you leave. It's not the goodbyes. They all scream and cry when you leave, and they should. It's basically saying, hey, I'm alone in the woods. A lion might eat me. Come on back, Mom, right? It's when you return. If they don't run up and go, ah, you're home, and they continue playing with their toy like, oh yeah, she's here, then you know you have some insecurity and attachment.
Really?
They don't trust their primary caregiver to meet their needs, so they've checked out.
Right. And what's unfortunate, what you see a lot too, is just pure YouTube screen time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you see. I see it all the time.
And parents too, on screens.
Yes. Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, I'm a young family. My son is 2. And right around a year, 2 year-ish, he started to want to, like, if we're on the phone getting texted, he'd want to be like, what are you doing? Even younger than that, but I really noticed it about a year ago. And, but I see families, I see people, they're all at the dinner, and I see kids on an iPad or kids on the phone.
During mealtime.
During mealtime, during every time though.
Yeah.
I'll see parents at the gym, and I see their kids on the screen. I see, and that is brain damaging long term. I feel like, I mean, it's hard to say with the research because it's so new, right?
Yeah, but
I can only assume though, but if the kid's going towards a screen versus going towards mom or dad, it can't be effective.
you know, we did a small social experiment with a family when I was co-hosting the doctors, and the mother had written Dr. Phil a letter, who's the owner of the doctors, and said, hey, you know, please help Dr. Phil, my family's just addicted to tech. And we went to visit them, and indeed, the boy and the dad were gamers, and they had the full-on chairs, cockpit set up, and the big screen, and they sat there gaming all the time.
Sure.
The teenage girl was up in her room doing all her social media. Even the 6-year-old was on handhelds. And so what we did is we removed every tech out of the house and every remote control. I locked it immediately.
Holy crap.
I brought in a set of board games, and I brought in some books and said, we're going to do a tech detox for only 3 days. We had, we left video cameras with them to be able to video each other and whatever.
Sure.
So the first day was rough.
I can only imagine.
By the second day, they were so bored after dinner that the teenage daughter said, well, why don't we go for a walk since there's nothing else to do? And the whole family went out for a walk and hiked after dinner. Then they started making dinner together and planning it out because nobody had anything to do. They were so bored. And then doing the dishes together and playing board games. And honestly, at the end, they were just, even in 3 days, a transformed family. So we have to self-regulate ourselves, and it has to start with the adults.
Yeah.
If parents can't get off their tech, you can't expect the kids to do it.
No.
Right? So we've got to create certain tech boundaries in our houses, a certain time of night that all tech goes away, a certain, obviously dinner time, nobody having tech at the table, and schedule some time for one-on-one, just talking and just being together.
And you were telling me this in a conversation we had in the past where I think it was something as simple as just 20 minutes.
20 minutes a day.
Of your undivided time with a child.
So satiating. Now, for a parent who has 3 kids, that means an hour and a half almost of their life they've got to devote every day.
God forbid.
But there are 24 hours in the day, right?
Yeah.
And if you make it a special ceremonial thing, in other words, don't try to play zone and have all 3 there at once, but say, you know, from 5 o'clock to 5:20 is Timmy's time. Timmy, put the sign on the door, nobody can come in, it's just me and Timmy.
Okay.
And then when you get in that room with the do not disturb sign, then you don't
love
say, let's do this, why don't we do this? Look, I got this game, because Timmy's now overwhelmed with just simply sit with him and watch him and engage with him in whatever he's doing. So if he crawls over and pulls out the Lego, you say, hey, looks like we're going to do Lego. And if he gets bored and moves on to playing with his train track, move with him. Don't say, hey, let's do that. Why don't we build something big? Because then it becomes the adult playtime.
You're right.
Right? It's about child-led play, where mostly they are observed by their parent. They felt seen. They felt heard. You know what the most important, I think it's 5 words that a sports parent can say after a game? The only thing a sports parent should say after a game. I enjoyed watching you today. I enjoyed watching you today. That's all a kid wants to hear.
That's right.
They don't want to hear, you got to try harder next time, or why'd you miss that goal, or why didn't the coach put you in more? Because now you're in the game with them. You're not supposed to be in the game. It's their game. You're supposed to be observing their fabulous, wonderful life as they start to bloom.
And what you find, too, with a lot of adults, I know I find this, and I'm sure you have, is there's an insecurity. It's like a subconscious insecurity, but it's really like with those things of approval, like literally being addicted to being approval.
Yeah. No, first of all, children are not your place to work out your stuff. Okay, go to therapy.
Yeah.
These children are their own separate individual people, and the way to be a good parent is to model being a good person, first of all, and secondly, just keep them in a safe environment and watch them grow.
And that it just makes it just my mind's go in different places, because I know there's a lot of viewers, listeners out there, where they did grow up in a tough situation. Their parents weren't psychologists, right? Like my wife's a marriage and family therapist. That's a unique situation.
Yeah, you lucky.
It's not normal, right? And she is an attachment theory.
Therapy all day long,
I mean,
whether you want it or not.
Right. So a lot of these things I know about because of who I'm married to. But where can people find this information? Whether it be a new parents out there, I see them doing and I watch it only because I know the other side of things, of like crying it out and all these things they do with their kids. Right. But that's what they've learned, and that's it's a learned behavior. But like, where can they find this information? And like, one of the things out there, bottom line is, there's so much information out there that it is overwhelming for someone to say, I want to eat healthy today, and there's 10 reasons why you should eat healthy and how to do it, right? And there's all these, and then there's like 10 ways to be a good parent.
But how about talking about the obstacles to eating healthy? You know, I teach psychology of health counseling, and I'm training this next generations of health psychologists who counsel people on their health habits. And what we've learned is educating people doesn't change behavior.
No, it doesn't.
What changes behavior, you see, our brain not only is a pleasure-seeking machine, but it also is a problem-solving machine. And so if instead of saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, which only instills huge feelings of guilt and makes people eat worse, is to simply say, I know you want to eat better. I know you want to exercise more. Let's have a look at your life, see the pressures on your life, and let's come up with the top 3 obstacles. And then you tackle one at a time. So if it's time management, which is usually the most common thing, then you go through the 24-hour schedule and you try to find incremental places where small incremental changes can be made. If it's access to food or affordability, you help provide resources that can help them. Basic cooking classes. I mean, if all Americans did was learn how to cook, it would get them off processed food. And you can take any vegetable and boil it pretty much. Right. You can take any vegetable and roast it in the oven with a little olive oil, maybe not lettuce, although even charred lettuce is in now, charred Caesar salads, right? They barbecue the lettuce.
Right, why not?
Why not? It's really quite simple.
Well, when it comes to diet, I mean, the 2 words, whole foods. Not the restaurant, not the grocery store, but whole foods.
Real foods.
Whole foods, real foods.
Yeah.
It makes such a difference over a processed protein bar, seemingly healthy, but is loaded with 20 grams of sugar, and it's just about your daily intake you should have.
Yeah.
You know?
So I do 2 things in my diet. One is my house is a sugar-free zone. There's literally no sugar, no honey, no nothing.
Temptation.
No, it's not even there.
Right? Yeah, if it's
there. There's a little ethanol because I like to make sometimes the mug muffins, which is out of coconut flour and almond flour.
My wife does that stuff.
Yeah, I make those little. But that's the first thing. And the second thing is there's no processed food. There's none. I mean, if you're hungry, I have a few people living in my house right now, and they're pretty shocked that one is visiting from Sweden, and she said, you can come in at the end of the day, we're all starving, and you can have a whole meal on the table in 10 minutes. How do you do that? And I'm like, I just know how to make quick sauces. Right. I know I can cut up some shallots, add a little white wine, add a little chicken stock, saute some chicken breasts in it, and boom, and there's a salad with it. You chop that salad, you set the table, come on. And in 10 minutes, maybe 15, I can put together a meal that you don't even have time to drive to a restaurant to get, which would be poor quality there.
Right, and incomparable. You don't know what they're putting in it, really.
I promise you, if you're eating any entree in America that costs less than $20, it's full of crap. It's full of salt, sugar, trans fats, and the cheapest quality meat, and with the most pesticides in it, and the most pesticides vegetables, because there's no way to run a business, a food business, that cheaply.
Isn't that crazy? I always whenever I go to the farmer's market, it's typically go to the farmers market as much as I can. But I'm always like, I spent more money here. Right, but I'm like, this seems like we're cutting out the middleman in a way, right? You know?
Well,
but
there are better ways to do it than the farmers market. Consumer-supported agriculture, right? CSA boxes. If you go online and just Google CSA
boxes.
Yeah, consumer-supported agriculture.
I'm gonna write that down.
What they are is, so let's say a whole group of organic farmers get together.
Yep.
Now, one makes carrots, the other makes kale,
Sure.
and the other makes mushrooms. Okay. Nobody wants to buy a whole box of carrots.
Sure.
But if they get together and each put a little bit in their thing, so they create these delivery services that might take 5 or 6 family farms. They load up a box with 5 or 6 or 8 things, and they'll deliver it directly. And there you really do cut out the middleman. Some of those are so affordable. I used to subscribe to one through our kids' school that was a fundraiser, so it also gave some money to the school.
Right.
And my weekly box of vegetables was $35. $35.
Wow.
So I took it one time to a well-known grocery store in Southern California, and I walked in and I showed the manager, and I said, all I want to do is use your scales and weigh everything and compare the price. I took pictures of their prices.
Okay.
And to buy the same amount of vegetables there would have been $68. So it was less than half. Now, if you're in Southern California or Northern California, I have subscribed for 10 years to an amazing company called grubmarket.com.
Okay.
Grub Market used to be called Farm Box LA, but they are an all organic, straight from farm to consumer, and they're very affordable. I even get my dairy, eggs. They have local artisan cheesemakers. They have the nut growers. I get my olive oil from them.
Oh, wow.
And so my box is about $120 a week, and it feeds 3 people.
Yeah, you're going to spend probably
Oh.
maybe double, but at least a third
If
more.
I bought
for
that at
family
whole
three.
paycheck, it would
Whole
be.
paycheck, yeah.
And I have to say, people get all excited that Amazon bought whole paycheck and that now the prices have gone down.
Yeah,
but they're tricking you now.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff in there is conventionally grown.
Yeah,
Their organic section has shrunk
I would
like
imagine
crazy.
so.
Can we talk about pesticides for a minute?
Please.
Just a minute.
Please, yeah.
Again, the thinking was, if there was such a minuscule amount of a pesticide in, say, one salad, that your body could pretty much metabolize it and get rid of it. However, you eat 3 to 5 servings of vegetables a day, I hope. It says 3 to 5 servings of pesticides.
Right.
And you eat 7 days a week, and you eat 30 days a month, and you eat 365 days a year. The cumulative value of pesticides in your system is the single greatest toxin that we have that is contributing to cancer, to inflammation, to all these weird food allergies. Trust me, there are chemicals in your food that are killing you. And so that's why I cannot, everything will go back to being organic. It used to be, but everything was until the food industry started figuring out ways to do it. But everything will go back to being organic once consumers continue to vote with their wallets.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
you vote every time you're at the cash register for what you want.
Right.
If you buy those foods filled with pesticides, that's what they'll restock on the shelves.
You're absolutely right. It's the easiest way. I mean, seemingly, without, it's so habitual. People who just go to the same grocery store their parents went to, and then it's a compound.
It doesn't have to be expensive. One of my favorite chains is Trader Joe's, who has a conventionally grown version and an organic version of pretty much every fruit and vegetable.
We shop a lot there.
And it's so affordable.
Yeah.
I think the average price of anything in that store is $2.99. That's their favorite price,
much,
isn't it? $2.99.
Yeah.
$2.99.
Yeah.
It's great.
I agree. I was kind of not shifting other gears, but I want to ask you a couple other questions. We started this as relationship expert too. Is you're talking about how there's all these single households now.
Yeah.
I don't know what the numbers are.Maybe you would know.
Well, there are definitely more unmarried adults in America than married adults for the first time in history. Yeah, first time in history.
I didn't know that. A couple things. What do you think has led to that? And then, if those people are seeking relationship, I mean, what do you think is the most healthy way to find someone that they want to be with and stay in a long lasting? Because most people, if they're in a relationship, they want to stay in that relationship.
Right.
I'm going to throw that out there as an assumption.
Well, I will say this, that back when marriage rates were really high, people had much lower expectations for their marriage. You had these traditional gender roles, and the guy was supposed to be a provider. Right. She was supposed to be the caregiver and the domestic responsibilities. And whether you were happy in it or not, that's just the way it was. And so I will say that now women need marriage less. We are seeing a more economic rise of females. And so for that reason, and religion is going down, so people marry for religious reasons. Okay. And I don't think that marriage rates are going down as much as they're becoming more delayed. And
I see
this
that too.
isn't a problem for men.
Mhm.
It's a big problem for women who want to become mothers. Now, 1 in
Mhm.
5 women don't become mothers, and 1 in 5 men don't become fathers.
Okay.
That's been standard throughout our history.
Okay.
But those that want to are, because we're in the information age now, we don't
Mhm.
need labor to build railroad tracks. We need women to type and text and be good customer service call center people, because
Sure.
women have better social sensitivity, we're better communicators. So we're in the information age, and we actually have more American women in the workforce than men right now. And so what ends up happening is women are eating up their fertility window
Yeah.
during their 20s with education and career building.
Yeah.
And then for women, there's a huge partner crunch if they want to become mothers in their early 30s.
Big time.
Because may I ask you, how old were you when you got married for the first time?
I'm married, I've only married once, so.
Okay.
What was I? We just had that's going to kill me. We were married in 2014, so we married 4 years. So I was 28 when we got married.
28. So the average age of first-time marriage for males is 28. So he's right there in the average. So the commitment-oriented guys that have secure attachment styles are off the market by 30. The players are left over.
Right. That is true.
Yeah. It's absolutely true. And so it makes it more difficult for women. And so then women are choosing to have children without the benefit of marriage. And again, this is not a moral question. I don't care if you get married or not.
Right.
But we do not have the social supports that, say, a more socialized country like Sweden or Canada or Norway might have for single parents. They even have single parent housing with shared kitchens in Sweden, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have, until we have childcare in every workplace, until we have more affordable housing for single parents, unfortunately, it is only the most highly educated, high-income earning women who are able to
100%.
Successfully negotiate single parenthood.
I think what is it, Sweden, there's like a 19-month maternity leave or something like that.
It's 18 months,
18
and the
months.
best thing about
There you
it
go.
is they legislate fatherhood. So
I've seen that too.
one parent is not allowed to take the full 18 months. One of the parents has to take at least 3 months.
Right.
Tends to be the guy.
Sure.
So when you go to Stockholm, you see these roving bands of baby-wearing dads, and they have the widest range of masculinity on display.
Of course.
I will say this about gender roles. You know, having traditional gender roles, while it put women in terribly uncomfortable boxes, it also put men in terribly uncomfortable boxes. And research on men who are stuck into, hyper-masculinity beliefs have worse physical health and worse mental health.
100% right.
It's more important that we're all just human and have discussions about what's best for us and as far as raising kids.
So back to
So expectations in the 50s were very low because we had traditional gender roles.
Okay.
Now one of the problems with relationships is expectations have gone too high. In other words, people want their spouse to be their best friend, their wild lover, their emotional support system, their entertainment complex, the helper with the kids. It's too much. It's too much.
So you're saying lower your standards, what you're saying?
No.
I'm just joking, but yeah.
Padded with other kinds of important supportive social relationships.
Right.
Your spouse shouldn't be the be-all and end-all to your mental health. Do not put, and men are particularly at fault for doing this. They put all their emotional eggs in one basket. They stop hanging out with the guys. They stop having all this other social support. And then when she gets bored and leaves, when they have an empty nest, he is left there. I see this population of isolated, lone wolf single men over 40, and it breaks my heart. They don't know how to make a friend. They don't know how to hang out and find friends. So
They're too secluded.
Yeah, too secluded. So we also need to have more connections with our extended family and with multi-generational family. We're all, this all happened because as capitalism rose and these big corporations rose, they started to find places to build offices that was cheaper for them.
Of course.
And then they moved the workforce. They created this
happens.
mobility. They created this mobility. And by creating a mobile workforce, you were tearing babies away from grandparents, kids away from parents. You're just pulling. And so mobility isn't necessarily good for our mental health, and it's not necessarily good for families.
Right. People get so cemented to their jobs where they'll go anywhere to take their job, and then but they do leave their family. I mean, I see it too with my. I'm sure you've seen it, but they do leave their family kind of like they're like the second or third, decision, or not the first decision.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? In countries that are more socialist, like Denmark in particular, people's identity isn't connected necessarily with their career. Their identity is more connected with their hobbies.
Mm.
So in those countries, it's actually a weird question to say, what do you do?
Hmm.
That would go like, well, you know.
Who cares?
Yeah. Like I have actually a couple Swedes living in my house right now, and one of them
Right.
said, oh, my friend in Stockholm, she just got a really great job. And I said, oh, that's good. What does she do? And she goes, well, you know, she's a really good dancer, and she's a really great soccer player, and she loves to work with
That's
little
what she
kids.
does. I love it.
That's what she said. And I said,
There you
but
go.
what did you said she got a great job? What is her job? Oh, she works in a grocery store. They pay her very well, good benefits.
Yeah, she's happy.
Like that was like what she did. Well, she's a soccer player, she's
Right.
a dancer, and she loves to work with kids. That's who she is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So much different in here.
Yeah.
I think we're in a complete achiever. I mean, United States is an
We
achiever.
connect it with money.
Yeah, it's all connected with
Connect
money. It's an
identity with
achiever
money.
country in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
I lived overseas for a while, so I can definitely attest to what you're talking about. It's
Yeah.
completely different.
I do think it's changing. I think millennials, you know, this is the big first generation that
Yep.
will not do as well as their parents. It's just not possible for them to. And so they can either feel hopeless, disadvantaged, fear-based, and, you know, hope that the government will bring jobs back to them, or they can live with less and find more in their relationships.
And what you're seeing too is a massive. I'm a millennial, right? So what I'm seeing is just from like how I've grown up is a massive shift in like the personal development space, the psychology space. People are a lot more open to going to see a therapist.
Yeah.
They're a lot more
Stigma's
open to
leaving.
talking about all these different things. A lot of it is they've seen their parents grow up, get divorced, you know, chase money, whatever, and end up just not as happy as they could be. But a lot of millennials are waiting longer to get married.
Yeah.
And they're waiting long, like you said, they are waiting longer to have kids.
Yeah.
The issue to that is if someone's female and they're 37 and they're single and they say, I really want to have a family right now.
And trust me, a corporation will be happy to take her after-tax money, or hard-earned after-tax money, and freeze her eggs for $20,000. Again,
yeah.
it's all corporations trying to play the game with biology, when really it's about learning to have healthy relationships earlier on.
Yeah. So for you too, going back to like the attachment theory too, and discussing like, so some of these people, I guess from your experience and your research, how can you really discuss with someone or tell if they've had if they had an anxious attachment or whatever kind of attachment as a younger person? Do you see that 20, 30 years down the line?
Yeah,
What does it look like?
Childhood trauma plays
Right.
out in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of intimacy.
Mm.
There are many people who can have sex, but they can't actually
Connect.
show their feelings and their heart,
Mhm.
right? So fear of emotional intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Vigilant clock watching, like feeling that they're going to be abandoned at all times, and getting very angry if the person is late or doesn't show up or didn't text back on time. That fear, you know, if you think of your attachment as your metaphorical umbilical cord, it's your lifeline, and feeling that your lifeline is going to disappear. There's a lot of fear and anger around that. So they move from one partner to another, hoping that somebody will make them feel whole. But the hole that exists has to do with early life trauma, and they haven't worked through that.
So let me ask you a question too. That kind of leads me to kind of another question, because we can get into attachment theory and get really in depth. I know, right? But because I'll find people where they have, let's say, a spouse, whether it be a man or husband or wife. I'm going to typically husband. That's this way, where they're controlling, a little bit more controlling. Like, hey, where are you? How long you been
That's
there?
an anxious
The
attachment
clock-
style.
Yeah, anxious attachment, right?
Where are you going? Who are you with? What's happening? Right? Are you going to abandon me? Yeah.
Right, and so I think it comes off as controlling, as in this person is trying to control my
But
life.
it's fear of loss.
But it's fear of loss.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful thing.
Well, here's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
Is that those people with an anxious attachment style tend to be most attracted to those who have an avoidant attachment style.
Right, and describe that.
Because, so the avoidant person feels easily smothered. Maybe he had or she had an intrusive parent who wrapped them too much, who stuffed food into them, who was just too much.
Overbearing.
And so they easily perceive that they are being absolutely engulfed, even if they're not. That's their belief system. And so they meet the anxious person who's, where are you going? Why didn't you text me back? What's happening, right? And believe it or not, as uncomfortable as it is, it feels familiar. That's what love must be, because that's what my mom did.
Wow.
And so what happens is they get into this chase. And believe it or not, people with an anxious attachment style who fall in love with an avoidance style, these relationships last the longest. The duration is so long, but it's filled with so much pain. because they go back to the scene of the crime. They're trying to solve their early life conflict. So at this point, I'll keep mom at bay and I'll create the boundaries, or this will be the time that I'll get daddy to come back. Daddy will stay. I won't be alone. I won't be lonely, right? And so it is the infantile urges that come up in our adult attachments, and they play out. They play out in how we text and how we date and how we mate, and if there's afterplay in sex, or if somebody runs to the bathroom because it's just too much, right? And so that's fascinating how it comes out in almost every behavior we have.
That is something like just you discussing anxious attachment and avoidant attachment and their attraction to each other is, I think, sheds so much light for some of our listeners, is to like kind of understand why maybe they're in a tough relationship right now. They can't figure out, like, oh, we're going to therapy, but we're not really I don't know.
Well, people with an insecure attachment style, whether they be anxious or avoidant, don't have a model in their head for what is healthy love. So they go to therapy to say, well, is this normal? That's what they're asking all the time. Is this right? Is this normal?
Right.
Whereas when you have somebody who has a secure attachment style, and sometimes the lucky person who's anxious or avoidant falls in love with the person with the secure attachment style because they're just so hot or they make so much money. And that person with the secure attachment style is strong and stable. They can give care comfortably. They can receive care comfortably. They can express their feelings comfortably. They're comfortable hearing the other person's feelings. So when the anxious person spins out, the secure person goes, it's okay, babe. When you're ready, I'm right here. It's fine. Or when the avoidant person runs away for no reason, the secure person giggles and goes, okay, well, give me a call when you're ready. I'm here, right? So these kinds of relationships can actually heal. Because having a poor, painful attachment style isn't a prescription for pain for life.
No.
We can change across the lifespan.
It shouldn't be.
And on that note, I need to go teach my students. Did you hear that bell?
Yeah.
It's I have a class to teach.
I love it. So thank you so much for being on the show. I mean,
I'm always happy to. Can I put out my social media?
Please. I was going to say.
Everything is at Dr. Wendy Walsh, Dr. Wendy Walsh. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I don't really do Snapchat. My middle schooler wouldn't allow me.
No Snapchat. So you can find Wendy. We're going to be posting this all over, so we'll be tagging Wendy. You can follow her. She has blogs. She has a YouTube channel, which I suggest everyone subscribe to.
And subscribe to my YouTube channel, and my radio show on KFI AM 640 Los Angeles goes up on the iHeart Radio app every week as a podcast. So
awesome.
Yeah, and I have books out there. You'll
books.
You'll find it all.
There's no shortage of material that she has, which is really powerful, and I hope everyone can divulge and start following.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice chatting.
Awesome.
Thanks, Daniel.
Cool.